Have you ever questioned your worth in a relationship? Has time subtly taken away the person you once were? Imagine being with someone you deeply love, only to find their appreciation gradually replaced by subtle complaints that slowly chip away at your soul. How would you respond? Would you stand firm, or would the weight of their words eat away at you? In today's video, we explore the psychological journey of a man who faced this very dilemma, navigating the complexities of love, aging, and self-worth. This story takes you through heartbreak and resilience, rejection and rediscovery, and ultimately, the triumph of choosing dignity over despair. By the end, you'll gain profound insights into self-respect, the courage to walk away, and the power of reclaiming your life. Stay with us, because this isn't just one man's story. It's a reflection of the struggles many of us face in relationships and in life. If you've ever questioned your worth or struggled to rise above someone else's judgment, this video is for you. Together, we will uncover the wisdom that comes from embracing our true selves and living life on our own terms. Don't miss a second of this journey. It might just change the way you see yourself and your relationships forever. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I encourage you to hit the subscribe to button and ring the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on today's topic. If it resonates with you, please comment. 1. Below. If not, leave a mark 0. Your feedback is crucial in helping me create better content that aligns with your interests. Now, let's begin. At first, he tried to brush it off with forced laughter, a strained chuckle that even felt unfamiliar to him. He reminded himself that they were just harmless jokes, the kind everyone makes when age enters the equation, especially in a relationship where years are more than just numbers. He had heard those remarks before, comments about older men with younger partners. He wanted to believe that laughing along, pretending it didn't hurt, would take away their sting. But deep down, every joke cut deeper than the last, carving invisible scars into his pride. He tried to justify it. She doesn't mean it, he thought. It's just her way of joking. He smiled, even as a growing knot tightened in his chest. He convinced himself that their love was stronger than this, built on years of shared laughter, deep conversations, and unforgettable moments. He clung to those memories, hoping they would drown out the mounting sense of inadequacy her words left behind. However, as days turned into weeks, the remarks grew more frequent, more pointed, and increasingly harder to ignore. What started as light-hearted teasing evolved into a relentless stream of subtle but cutting criticisms, each one carrying the weight of an unspoken accusation. His laughter, once a tool of deflection, felt empty and powerless. Her words lingered long after the jokes ended, replaying in his mind during moments of silence. She started to comment on his slower steps, the stiffness in his joints, the fatigue in his eyes. Each observation served as a harsh reminder of his age. Initially, he tried to counter her remarks with self-deprecating humor, hoping to lighten the shift in their dynamic. "I guess it's time I take up yoga," he'd joke when she teased his stiffness. "Maybe I'll run a marathon next year," he'd reply when she pointed out his slower pace. But no matter what he said, her responses always seemed sharper, heavier. The jokes lost their playful tone and began to feel like a spotlight on his insecurities, highlighting every wrinkle, every ache, every weakness. The man who once felt comfortable in his own skin started to crumble under the weight of her disapproval. It was no longer just about the age difference. It was about the unspoken truth her jokes revealed. She no longer saw the man who once captivated her with his confidence and charm. Instead, she saw what time had taken away. Her playful teasing had turned into thinly veiled contempt, and no matter how hard he tried to laugh along, he couldn't ignore the heaviness of her words. They clung to him like unwelcome guests, growing heavier with each passing day. The breaking point came one night in the dim silence of their bedroom, a space that had once been their sanctuary, filled with warmth and intimacy. A casual remark about their intimacy turned into something deeper, sharper. Her words hit like icy daggers, piercing through his defenses. She spoke of what she longed for, of a younger man, someone with boundless energy and stamina, someone who could give her what he could not. It wasn't just his pride that shattered, it was his spirit. The shame was raw and suffocating, an ache that no distraction could erase. It wasn't just about their physical relationship, it was about everything he had built his identity around. He had believed that love was more than youth and appearance, that it thrived in shared experiences and deep emotional connection. But to her, none of that mattered anymore. She didn't see the wisdom, the patience, or the devotion he had given so freely. She saw only what he lacked, what time had taken away. Desperate to bridge the widening gap between them, he tried to reason with her, not with anger, but with sincerity. He spoke of love as something beyond the physical, a bond strengthened by mutual appreciation and shared history. He tried to explain that intimacy was more than just desire or performance. It was trust, companionship, and tenderness that deepened with age. His voice trembled with emotion, but his words fell into a void, lost in the silence that followed. At that moment, he realized it wasn't just his body she was rejecting. It was him. The man who once made her feel safe and adored was now a relic of a past she no longer cherished. As he lay there, staring at the ceiling in the suffocating silence of their shared bed, he felt a pain far deeper than his aging bones. It was the ache of losing love, of no longer being truly seen or valued. For the first time in his life, he felt truly old. Not because of the passing years, but because of the profound loneliness that settled in. The realization that the person he loved no longer saw him for who he was, but only for what he had lost. The man she once yearned for was no longer the man she believed could satisfy her needs. As he lay in the darkness, he couldn't help but wonder if he had been mistaken all along, if love was truly meant to fade, just like the color in his hands, the strength in his grip, and the fire that once burned so brightly between them. Her sharp tone silenced his words, muffling them as if he were speaking into a void. Every denial echoed through him, creating cracks in the foundation of his spirit. The suffering was relentless, deeper than anything he had ever known. Her words felt like tiny shards of glass slipping through his heart, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. He drifted across a sea of humiliation, questioning how the woman he loved could reduce him to this. Yet, amidst the emotional turmoil, a small ember of defiance began to glow deep within him. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a reminder that he was more than her cutting words and cruel remarks. If you're still watching this video and find these insights valuable, please comment 1 below to let me know you're still with me. That ember carried the weight of his life experiences, his hard-earned wisdom, and the strength he had built over decades of challenges. He was not just an aging body or a fading shadow of his younger self. He was a man who had lived, loved, and understood the essence of carrying joy and wisdom for another human being. His knowledge extended beyond the superficial vitality of youth, offering a depth that no younger man could replicate. Straightening his posture, he turned to that inner resolve and steadied his voice. I can give you things that younger men can't even begin to understand, he said, each word measured and deliberate. His tone was calm but resolute, carrying the quiet confidence of a man who knew his worth, even if she didn't. He spoke not of fleeting excitement, but of a love built on compassion, gentle care, and the deep intimacy that comes from years of truly understanding another's heart. He painted a picture of a love that transcended the physical, one rooted in connection, trust, and shared vulnerability. But his words fell flat. She responded with a hollow, cold laugh that echoed through the room, laced with derision. Her response dismissed his attempts to salvage their closeness as desperate and pathetic. She reduced his sincere plea to nothing more than the ramblings of an aging man clinging to a lost illusion. Each cruel remark hit him like a hammer, crushing the fragile hope he had been holding on to. The pain of her rejection was nearly unbearable. Yet, what hurt even more was the realization that she no longer saw him for who he truly was. To her, he was no longer a man of strength and wisdom. He was just an old man, someone whose value had diminished with time. Her contempt stripped away the layers of his identity, leaving him feeling small and insignificant. The love they once shared, the bond he had cherished, felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the harsh reality of her disdain. Still, a part of him clung to hope. He told himself this was a test, a challenge he had to endure to prove his worth, not just to her, but to himself. He believed that if he could withstand her cruelty, if he could show her the depth of his love and resilience, she might one day see him anew. He imagined her realization, perhaps in a quiet moment of reflection, of the unwavering loyalty and enduring love he had offered. But as the days turned into weeks, and her remarks grew sharper, that hope began to wane. Every harsh word, every contemptuous chuckle chipped away at his self-esteem, turning him into a mere shadow of the man he once was. Doubt crept in. He began to wonder if he truly had anything left to offer. Was his love ever enough? Had it ever been? The illusion that he could win her back, that he could prove his value, started to crumble under the weight of reality. This wasn't love. This was a slow erosion of his dignity. He was giving away pieces of himself, his pride, his self-respect, for a relationship that no longer uplifted him, but instead diminished him. The realization was painful, yet it brought with it a clarity he could no longer ignore. Her words and actions were taking a toll on him, and he could no longer pretend that enduring her indifference was an act of love. With a heavy but determined heart, he made a decision. Letting go wasn't easy. It felt like admitting defeat. But deep down, he knew it wasn't defeat. It was liberation. It was a choice of self-respect, a reclaiming of his identity and pride. One evening, he turned to her with a calm resolve in his eyes. "It's over," he said, his voice steady yet devoid of anger. He spoke with the quiet strength of a man who had finally chosen to honor himself. Her response was one of shock. She stared at him with a blank expression, a mixture of uncertainty and disbelief. For so long, she had seen him as someone she could belittle, someone who would endure her contempt without question. The idea that he might stand up for himself, that he could walk away, was something she had never considered. Angry words followed, sharp and cutting. But this time, they rolled off him like water on stone, powerless against the strength he had found within himself. For the first time in years, he felt free, as though a heavy weight had been lifted from his shoulders, allowing him to stand taller, breathe deeper, and see the world with newfound clarity. He had shed an old layer, leaving behind the pain and humiliation that had held him captive for too long. The scars of her rejection would remain, but they were no longer a source of shame. Instead, they stood as proof of his resilience, a reminder of the courage it took to choose himself. As he turned away from the life they had built together, he felt a profound sense of peace. No longer burdened by her judgment or cruelty, he embraced the man he truly was, a man of wisdom, depth, and quiet strength. Though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. He had reclaimed his dignity and his freedom. For the first time in a long time, he felt whole. The choice to walk away brought moments of doubt and loneliness, but it also opened the door to rediscovery. In the silence that followed their separation, he was forced to sit with his thoughts and confront the emptiness he had been avoiding. Those early days were agonizing, but over time, they became a blank canvas, an opportunity to rebuild not just his life, but himself. He reached out to old friends, people he had drifted away from during his marriage. Their warm, welcoming responses surprised him. These were the people who remembered his laughter, who saw the fire in him long before it had been dimmed by years of compromise. They embraced him with open arms, reminding him of the man he once was before he had defined himself through someone else's eyes. With their encouragement, he began checking off the places he had always dreamed of visiting but never had the time. He walked along quiet beaches at sunrise, feeling the sand between his toes and the cool ocean breeze against his face. He wandered through the cobblestone streets of small towns, losing himself in their charm and history. Each journey was a step toward reclaiming a part of himself he thought he had lost forever. He dusted off an old guitar, untouched for decades, and as he tuned its strings, the melodies that emerged were hesitant at first, but they carried echoes of his younger self. Hours passed as he let the music flow, releasing emotions he had bottled up for years. Whether through music, writing, or simply being present, he found pieces of himself scattered across the years and began piecing them back together. He also started to appreciate the smallest details. The way the morning light poured through his window, the comforting weight of a book in his hands, the simple pleasure of a slow, hot cup of coffee. He realized that beauty wasn't found in grand gestures or dramatic moments, but in the quiet, consistent joys that filled each day. With time, his perspective on aging shifted. Each wrinkle became a badge of honor, a testament to lessons learned and battles fought. Every silver strand of hair told a story of resilience and perseverance. Aging was no longer something to fear, but a gift, a gradual unfolding of wisdom that allowed him to see life's truths more clearly. Life wasn't about proving his worth to others. It was about honoring himself, respecting his journey, and embracing the man he had become. For the first time, he stopped seeking validation from those who couldn't appreciate his depth, his experiences, or his love. His happiness was his to create and to protect. Choosing peace and self-love over the weight of others' expectations was the most liberating choice he had ever made. With this newfound clarity, he began each morning with a sense of purpose. He immersed himself in long walks through nature, where the rustling leaves and singing birds offered a kind of music no human could compose. Sitting by the river, watching the water flow endlessly, reminded him of his own resilience, his ability to keep moving forward despite the obstacles he had faced. His relationships also flourished in ways they hadn't before. Old friendships became his anchor, true connections with people who valued and loved him for who he truly was. They shared laughter that came from a genuine place, free from judgment or ulterior motives. Over cups of coffee and long conversations, their shared memories warmed his heart and soul. Through these bonds, he realized that love existed in many forms, not just romantic love, but deep connections built on friendship, trust, and mutual respect. If you're still watching this video and find these lessons valuable, please comment, too, below to let me know you're still here with me. He discovered a profound sense of self-respect, something no one could take from him. He was no longer weighed down by the expectations of others or diminished by their judgments. He was content, radiating a quiet confidence that came from within. His journey was far from over, but for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of what lay ahead. His future was his to shape, and he was determined to fill it with joy, peace, and the love he had always deserved. In his newfound freedom, he found joy in helping others. It started with small gestures, a listening ear for someone in need, a kind word to a struggling friend, or sharing wisdom with someone younger and lost. What began as simple acts of kindness grew into a greater purpose. With each conversation, he felt an unshakable connection, as if he was passing on a torch of resilience and hope. His words were no longer just advice. They were reflections of a lifetime filled with triumphs and lessons learned. He found fulfillment in mentoring not only the young, but anyone seeking clarity in a chaotic world. His guidance was gentle yet powerful, reminding others of their worth and the courage required to navigate life's challenges. In guiding others, he restored his own spirit, each act of kindness lifting him further from the shadows of his past. Most importantly, he became his own source of strength. Looking back on his journey, it became clear. True happiness wasn't something given by others. It was something he had to discover within himself. For the first time in years, perhaps ever, he could look in the mirror without regret or self-doubt. Instead of seeing flaws, he saw resilience. Instead of mistakes, he saw wisdom. His reflection no longer carried the weight of a broken man, but that of someone who had weathered life's storms and emerged stronger, wiser, and undeniably whole. Every scar told a story. Every wrinkle was a badge of honor. And with this understanding, he realized that life's true beauty lies not in avoiding pain, but in embracing every moment with courage and authenticity. Even in solitude, he found a peace that was once foreign to him, proof that he had finally come home to himself. His solitude became a refuge, a sacred space for contemplation, creativity, and gratitude. In the stillness, he found parts of himself that had long been buried beneath the noise of the world. He came to realize that being alone was not an emptiness to fear, but a freedom to embrace. Solitude was no longer a void. It was a blank canvas upon which he could paint the story of his life, free from the judgments and expectations of others. It was during these quiet moments that he gained the courage to dream again, the clarity to forgive himself, and the strength to cultivate a deeper appreciation for life's simplest pleasures. A sunrise, a steady routine, a peaceful walk, the distant laughter of a child. As the months turned into years, he often reflected on his journey with a heart full of gratitude and pride. The pain that once seemed unbearable had become the very tool that shaped his resilience. He had learned to value himself, to recognize his worth, and most importantly, to set boundaries that protected his peace. Above all, he had realized one invaluable truth: never to settle for less than he deserved, whether in life or in relationships. He came to understand that true love is never about losing yourself to meet someone else's expectations. It's about mutual respect, acceptance, and the kind of companionship that allows both people to grow. Ironically, the very relationship that once stripped him of his confidence and self-esteem had ultimately driven him to rediscover his inner strength. The heartbreak that once felt insurmountable had planted the seeds of his transformation. What he once thought was the end of his story had in fact marked the beginning of a brand new chapter, one richer and more fulfilling than he could have ever imagined. And it was in this beautiful irony that he found peace, greeting each new day with a soft, knowing smile, embracing the man he had become. His life was no longer a testament to pain, but to resilience, a beacon of hope for anyone who questioned their ability to rebuild after loss. He began keeping a journal, pouring his thoughts, reflections, and hard-earned wisdom onto its pages. Writing became both a form of healing and a way to leave behind a legacy. Love letters to himself and to anyone who might one day find comfort in his words. He wrote about the importance of self-love, the courage it takes to walk away from toxic relationships, and the quiet dignity that comes with aging gracefully. His journals became his treasures, a collection of truths reflecting the depth of his journey. Soon, his words caught the attention of a local community centre, which invited him to share his story with others. At first, he was hesitant, but eventually he agreed. Standing before a room full of faces marked by time and experience, he spoke from the depths of his soul. He shared the darkness he had once endured, the despair that nearly consumed him, and the revelations that brought him back to life. His words resonated deeply, sending ripples of inspiration and hope through the audience. Every time he stood before a crowd, his sense of purpose grew. It wasn't the applause that moved him, but the quiet gratitude in the eyes of those who approached him afterward, the trembling hands, the heartfelt thanks, the emotional stories from people who had found strength in his words. In helping others find their strength, he continued to heal his own heart. He learned to savor life in a way he had never done before, relishing the golden hues of autumn leaves, the laughter shared over coffee with friends, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that his life, though not perfect, was authentically his. Through his journey, he discovered one of life's greatest truths. Our worth is not something others can bestow upon us. It is something we carry within, waiting patiently to be embraced and honored. This realization became his legacy, a life reclaimed, a spirit unburdened, and a heart overflowing with gratitude and love for the person he had become. His story resonated far beyond the walls of the community centre, touching the hearts of those who longed to break free from societal expectations or relationships that no longer served them. If you're still watching this video and find these lessons valuable, please comment 3 below to let me know you're still here with me. On one quiet afternoon at an art exhibit, he struck up a conversation with a woman who was gazing at a painting with the same quiet intensity he often felt while creating his own work. Their conversation began with art, but soon drifted into stories of resilience, rediscovery, and the joys of finding oneself later in life. She too had endured loss and emerged stronger. Together, they discovered a connection rooted in authenticity. Unlike his past relationships, this bond came with no grand expectations or efforts to fix or complete one another. It was a partnership of equals, a steady companionship built on mutual understanding and acceptance. Over time, he realized that love, when freed from the weight of expectations, could be gentle, liberating, and profoundly beautiful. It was no longer about clinging to youth or fulfilling societal ideals. It was about truly seeing and accepting each other, flaws, wrinkles, and all. His life evolved into a space filled with warmth, shared laughter, and the quiet contentment of simply being. As he continued to age, he welcomed each new phase with an open heart. The lines on his face and the silver in his hair were no longer reminders of lost youth, but symbols of a life well lived. Aging was no longer something to fear, but a gift, an opportunity to deepen his understanding of himself, his relationships, and the world around him. Every moment felt precious, not because of its fleeting nature, but because he had learned to truly savor it. He found joy in the simplest things, the warmth of the sun on his skin, the laughter of a child in the park, the comforting aroma of rain on the earth. These once overlooked moments became treasures, gentle reminders of life's beauty, waiting to be noticed each day. In the end, his life became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the face of rejection and despair, one could rise, heal, and discover a deeper sense of purpose. His journey stood as proof that it's never too late to reclaim your worth, rewrite your story, and live with authenticity and courage. And what about this story resonated with you the most? Was it the quiet strength he found, the self-respect he embraced, or the realization that love begins within? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know what lesson you're taking with you on your journey forward. Let's create a space where we can inspire and uplift one another with our stories and experiences. If this story touched you, remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing content that speaks to the heart and mind. Thank you for being here today. Until next time, stay true to yourself, stay strong, and keep thriving.